The moment my fiancée willingly let herself be pinned down by my brother in the car, I decided I wouldn't be a simp anymore. So, I canceled the wedding, cut off her supplementary card, withdrew my investment, and kicked her out of my house. As she left, she raised her head high, her eyes cold. Marco, unless you kneel and apologize, don't even think about seeing me again. Later, I announced my wedding plans in front of the media. Yet, she came to my door drunk, eyes filled with desperation. Come back, I'll change. Chapter 1. Monica, put your clothes on and get out. I tapped on the car window, my voice trembling slightly. The dark garage was oppressive, heavy, the two in the car separated, my brother helping her out from the back seat, a smug smile playing on his lips. Brother, don't get the wrong idea. Monica said she had a headache, so I was just giving her a massage to help. His tone was light, as he pushed Monica into my arms. Bro, you're not really mad, are you? Monica is my sister-in-law. It's only right I take care of her. If anyone's to blame, it's me for lacking boundaries. Don't be mad at her. I saw the smudged lipstick on my fiancé's lips, and my emotions were a mix of bitterness and anger. This illegitimate half-brother, brought home recently, wanted to compete with me not just for family assets, but for my woman too. I spoke coldly. You can leave. But even as Monica, reeking of alcohol, leaned against me, she still found the strength to defend him. Marco, don't be harsh on him, or I won't talk to you anymore. My brother's smile widened as he slowly pulled a brand new car key from his pocket and pressed the button. Then I'll head out. Bro, thanks, by the way, to Monica for the new car. I'm really enjoying it. He emphasized the word enjoying, clearly implying something more. How could I not catch his meaning? Monica was my childhood friend, my first love, the treasure of my heart. I chased her for 10 years, spoiled her for 10 years, and she was supposed to marry me soon. I dragged Monica into my car, started the engine, and didn't say a word. Halfway through the drive, she leaned drowsily against the seat, her voice tinged with concern. Your brother, Mario, he's been through so much hardship alone out there for years, and now he finally has a home. Can't you treat him a little better? I still didn't respond. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, she opened her eyes, her tone growing colder. Bring him into the company. Mentor him yourself. Otherwise, don't even think about getting married. A harsh screech of the brakes echoed as I pulled the car over to the side of the road. Mario was just the son of a mistress, and his presence had worsened my mother's illness, which eventually led to her passing. And just 3 months after the funeral, my father brought him home. Monica knew all of this. If it had been anyone else, they wouldn't have dared to say such things to me. Annoyed, I rubbed my temples, closing my eyes, my mind filled with the scene of them in the car, lost in their desires. I had spoiled her too much over the years, and she seemed to have forgotten that she was once just a fallen heiress. I leaned toward her, and her long, pale legs tensed slightly, but all I did was unbuckle her seatbelt and point to the car door. Then let's not get married. I'll have everything packed and sent to you. Now, please get out and go home. Chapter 2. She straightened up, lifting her long legs slightly, and let out a soft laugh. Jealous of your brother? Isn't that childish? My gaze fell on the sapphire necklace around her neck. 30 million. It was a gift from my mother when she was still alive, and now, Monica had used my card to buy all kinds of luxury goods for that illegitimate son, even gifting him a $3 million car. Her reason? To make up for what my brother had missed out on all these years. Ridiculous. I opened the car door and stepped out, walking around to the passenger side to pull Monica out. In her moment of shock, I removed the sapphire necklace. This was meant for my wife, and since we're not getting married, I'll take it back now. I'll contact someone to cancel the wedding, and I'll have the PR team handle the announcement. I'll call you a cab. Monica's expression remained indifferent, without a hint of emotion, as if she was sure this was just me throwing a tantrum. Marco, I hope you don't regret what you said today. If you ever want to see me again, you'll have to kneel and apologize. Her voice was lazy, with a hint of coldness, as she turned and hailed a cab, walking away without looking back. I knew that Monica was actually quite vain. She loved being adored, being the center of attention. Before my brother came back, she had often gotten close to male celebrities and models. I had fought with her, argued like a madman, and even threatened her over these things. But each time, she manipulated me, and I ended up paying large sums to buy photos and suppress the news. She always claimed it was never serious, just some meaningless entertainment she had paid for. But the moment I saw her entangled with Mario, I suddenly wanted to ask myself, do I really have to marry Monica? I had everything, yet in love, I was like a lowly beggar, letting her hurt me over and over again, feeling she had nothing to fear. It wasn't worth it, right? I shook my head. Like tea, it tastes better once it's brewed. Life gets better when you learn to let go. Back at the villa, Mario was kneeling at my father's feet, massaging his legs. He looked up at me, a strange smile playing on his lips. Dad, brother is back. Please don't scold him. He didn't hit me. The marks on my face are just from an accidental fall. Brother, I'm sorry. Because of me, you and Monica fought. But how could you leave her on the side of the road like that? Chapter 3. Mario had a clearly visible red handprint on the left side of his face. I found it laughable. He was truly ruthless to himself. My father's face was already red with rage, and he stood up, walking toward me. Marco, how much do you hate your brother to hit him like this? You're selfish, unreasonable. He's been through so much hardship, and now he has to deal with a brother like you. Apologize to him now, or I'll disown you. Mario stood behind him, raising his eyebrows at me and mouthing 2 words silently, loser. I took a step forward and punched Mario square in the face. He staggered back, falling to the ground. Want an apology? Come here. Let me hit you as much as I want, and I'll consider giving you an apology. Mario's eyes reddened, and he pretended to tremble in fear. Brother, no, please don't hit me. I don't know what I did wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize. My father exploded, pulling Mario behind him and giving me a punch in return. Bastard. Touch my son again and I'll call the police. Get out. He shielded Mario, comforting him. Mario, don't cry. I'll take care of everything for you. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Mario's face was pale, tears and snot running down. Sobbing in my father's arms, I clenched my teeth, grabbed my coat, and stormed out. Better to leave than to waste my time witnessing their father-son melodrama. After wandering around aimlessly for a while, I decided to head back to the office. In the large, empty workspace, one light was still on. I quietly approached. A girl with her hair in a bun was furiously typing on the keyboard. She seemed to be thinking about something that made her sad. Her nose was red, and tears were rolling down her soft cheeks. Completely unaware of my presence, I cleared my throat, and she jumped up in a panic. Mr. Song, why are you here? I glanced at the clock. It was 10:30 p.m. Pack up and go home. I'll have the driver take you. She sniffled, holding back her tears, pouting as if she wanted to say something. But in the end, she softly replied, okay. Entering my office, I loosened my tie and sat on the sofa. I checked my phone, which was full of unread messages. Father, don't go too far. Do you think bullying your kind, innocent brother will get you more of the inheritance? As long as I'm alive, I'll protect him. Mario, brother, you hit me so hard. Monica came right over to take care of me. She's in my room now. Want me to video call you? I turned off my phone. I thought about how, when I was hospitalized for a bleeding ulcer from drinking too much, Monica didn't even come to see me. Pathetic. Suddenly, there was a knock on the office door. The girl returned, timidly poking her head in, holding up a small cake, her face slightly flushed. Mr. Song, I heard today is your birthday. This cake was supposed to be my midnight snack, but now I'm giving it to you. Happy birthday. Chapter 4. I was momentarily stunned. It was indeed my solar calendar birthday today. Monica had always thought lunar birthdays were too much trouble, so I'd only celebrated my solar birthday. I was about to refuse, but the girl blinked her big eyes and looked at me expectantly. She sat beside me, lit a candle, and pushed the cake in front of me. Make a wish. In the past, my wish was always to be with Monica, forever. But now, I sighed. She tilted her head in confusion. I was about to make an excuse, but my phone rang. Monica's personalized ringtone. I could already guess what she would say, so I didn't answer. The phone didn't ring again. Someone as proud as her would never call a second time. Elise, the girl in front of me, hearing her name, stood up nervously, looking at me with confusion and fear. Go home and pack. You're coming with me on a business trip tomorrow. Here is the continuation of your novel translation into English. Chapter 5. I remember this girl. Once, I was drunk and passed out in the office, and when I woke up in the morning, my head was resting on a pair of long legs. The girl in front of me was staring at me with wide, kitten-like eyes, still holding her phone. I jumped up, demanding she delete the photos, quit her job immediately, and as compensation, I'd give her $1 million. She shook her head, trying to explain, but I didn't give her the chance. I called HR right then and there. Later, I found out that, after getting drunk, I had mistaken her for Monica and slept on her lap the whole night. She had raised her phone to order me breakfast, and when she left, she didn't take the $1 million I offered. When I learned the full story, I had HR bring her back. Today, seeing her working late with red-rimmed eyes, it was obvious someone had been giving her a hard time. Elise's expression was a mix of confusion and happiness when she heard, and she obediently nodded, sweetly agreeing with a simple okay. Chapter 6. The next day, the news of my cancelled wedding with Monica was all over the headlines. While I was already at the airport with my new assistant, waiting to board a flight, the news had spread, and soon enough, the airport was swarming with reporters. Elise hid nervously behind me. What was originally a normal work relationship now appeared as if we had something to hide. Thanks to her actions, A sharp-eyed reporter asked. Mr. Song, is the reason for canceling your wedding with Miss Monica because you found someone new? Annoyed, I waved my hand and said into the camera with a simple word, tired. Tired of the endless suspicions during our countless arguments. Afraid she would cross lines and do something unforgivable. Then, in the dead of night, convincing myself over and over to trust her again. For so many years, I lived in constant fear of losing her, but I was tired of being that version of myself. After the plane landed, the moment I turned my phone on, Monica called. Her voice startled me. Marco, what do you mean by tired? Right now, immediately. Bring her to me and explain everything. Chapter 7. My voice was cold. Don't shout. It's irritating. Did you think I was joking when I said those things before? Monica was silent for a moment on the other end of the line. You said my voice was irritating. Marco, do you even know what you're doing? You promised me a grand wedding. We've already spent so much money, and now you're saying it's off, and in the news. Who's that woman hiding behind you? Did you bring her on purpose to provoke me? I asked her back. Do you even know what you did with Mario in that car? When you were sitting on his lap, grabbing the back of his head, kissing him like crazy. Did you forget that we were about to get married? Monica, you make me feel sick. After saying that, I blocked her number. Unlike before, I didn't feel the sharp pain of heartbreak. Instead, there was a sense of relief after getting the words out. The responsibilities, the security, the loyalty that should never be missing in a relationship, all of these, she never gave to me. Elisa's bright, clear eyes were watching me. Noticing my gaze, she nervously clutched the strap of her bag tightly. I have some vision problems, and sometimes I get tinnitus. I didn't reply. She awkwardly looked around, her face showing signs of anxiety. Oh, right, Mr. Song, tell me the itinerary for our trip, so I can prepare. I handed Elise the address and contact information. There's no specific itinerary. I came abroad to find a retirement home for my father. Suddenly, I thought of my attention-seeking brother with his theatrical personality. Sure enough, he had posted on social media again. Under the sunshine, he was having tea with my father, their faces close together in a selfie. After wandering for so many years, I finally have time to enjoy some quality father-son bonding. So happy, I smiled. Did he really think that by crying and playing the sympathy card, he could compete with me? Chapter 8. I quickly finished my business abroad, but I didn't want to return so soon. So, I asked Elise to arrange something, and unexpectedly, she took me skydiving. Up in the air, she gave me an excited smile, dimples appearing on her cheeks. Mr. Song, if you're scared, don't push yourself. I couldn't help but think of Monica. Everyone in our circle knew how madly in love I was with her. When she upset me, I'd drown my frustration by throwing money at some high-speed racing event. In those death-defying races, I never even flinched. So why now was my heart pounding, my blood surging, and I couldn't bear to look at the sky outside the cabin. Turns out, deep down, I was really afraid of death, and yet, for her, I repeatedly lost my reason, dancing with death on the edge. How pathetic. Elise furrowed her delicate brows slightly and gently wiped the sweat from my forehead. The next second, she spoke to the staff and canceled the activity. Sitting on the hotel's private beach, I apologized to Elise. Sorry for ruining your fun. It was clear she had been looking forward to it. She handed me a drink, puffing out her cheeks, and huffed through her nose. Don't worry, I'll keep your secret. Being afraid of heights isn't something to be ashamed of, but choosing to say no doesn't mean giving up on dreams, love, or desire. It's about protecting yourself better. Her voice was soft and sweet, like a child pretending to be an adult lecturing me. Of course, I could hear the concern in her words. I reached out and ruffled her hair, but she instinctively grabbed my hand. Her fingertips touched my skin, her cheeks and ears flushed red in an instant. I looked away, but her faint scent wrapped around me. My heart skipped a beat. After returning home, I asked if she wanted to continue being my assistant. Her little head shook like a rattling drum. Mr. Song, I'm afraid Monica might misunderstand, so I'm sorry. When she left, she gave me a small, somewhat sad smile. I knew what she was afraid of, but I also knew that no one but myself believed I had truly let go of Monica. Chapter 9. I had been away from the company for just a few days, and yet Mario had smoothly secured a position. He sat at the head of the conference room, basking in the spotlight. Monica, wearing a sleek black jacket, adorned with sparkling diamond earrings, stood elegantly beside Mario, a seductive smile playing on her lips as she spoke to him. The moment I walked in, everyone stood up in unison. I almost thought they didn't know who the real boss was, and I didn't mind firing the entire lot of them. After all these years of painstakingly building this company, no one had ever been able to challenge my position. Mario looked up and noticed me. He walked over and politely apologized. Brother, I'm sorry. Don't be mad at Dad. He insisted that Monica come to the company to teach me management skills so I could help you share the workload. His lips pressed together in a show of fear, but the provocation in his eyes was unmistakable. I glanced at him with my hands in my pockets and said, "Share the workload. With that frail body of yours, can you even manage to get it up in bed?" His face instantly turned pale, and his eyes welled up with tears. "Brother, if you want to scold me, just do it. Humiliate me as much as you want. I know you're hurting inside. If insulting me makes you feel better, I'm willing to let you do it." Monica gave me a complicated look. "Enough, Marco. Do you have to bully him every time you see him? Can't you act like a proper brother? Last time you slapped him, he had a headache for 3 days, and you didn't even show him any concern." Saying this, she pulled the tearful Mario into her arms. I found it ridiculous. Who would have thought Monica would be interested in a guy like this, acting like a helpless woman, always crying as if the world owed him something? I yanked him out of Monica's embrace. "You all leave. I have something to say to him alone." Monica hesitated, shooting me a glare, but eventually left with the others. Mario shrugged, sneering. "Honestly, I bet it hurts, doesn't it? Monica cares so much about me. How would you feel if she ends up marrying me? Would you go insane? Oh, by the way, Dad's already agreed to give me shares in the company. When I marry your first love, you won't even have the face to stay in this company, will you? No, that's not enough. I want to take everything from you because it's what you owe me and my mother." Chapter 10. I grabbed him by the collar and punched him in the face. "Oh, you and your mother. You're good at barking. Try barking a little more, and I'll show you how fitting a slap is for a baby like you." I threw another punch. "Do you think I'm afraid of hitting you in the company? I, Marco, have earned my place here. Something an ignorant, mediocre, pathetic fool like you could never understand." The people who had just left the room could hear the sounds of Mario's cries of pain. They gathered outside the office, whispering and snapping photos with their phones. Only Monica rushed back in, grabbing my arm tightly. "Stop it, Marco. What's gotten into you?" Mario saw her and spat out a mouthful of blood, along with a tooth, before falling to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I don't know what I did to upset him. He just went crazy and started hitting me out of nowhere." Monica couldn't stop my angry arm. Instead, she stepped in front of Mario, raising her face and closing her eyes. At that moment, I felt a strange pang of discomfort in my chest. "Monica, after all these years, what are we?" I hesitated, lowering my arm like a deflated balloon, slumping into a chair, and muttered, "Monica, you have to protect him, don't you?" She picked up a tissue to wipe the blood from Mario's mouth, her expression cold. "Marco, this time you must apologize. Sometimes, avoiding a question is its own kind of answer." I wasn't stupid enough to ask again. I lowered my head, chuckling bitterly. Even though Mario was bleeding, the look he gave me was one of triumphant victory. I gave them one last glance and walked out without saying a word. Outside the conference room, I called HR to revoke all investments with the Lee family and gave the order to fire Monica. Finally, I sent Mario's photo to my assistant. If security lets him into the building again, they'll all be fired. Standing outside, I lit a cigarette, feeling defeated. A familiar figure caught my eye, Elise, looking even more defeated than I was. Her arms were full of documents, and she trudged out of the building with her head down. "What's going on?" Elise shot me a look, her eyes misty and her lips pouting with frustration. "I knew your fiancé would kick me out. It's all your fault." Her expression made me laugh. "Don't go. She no longer has the authority to fire you." Chapter 11. Elise invited me for barbecue to thank me. She handed me the menu, and I ordered a dozen ice-cold beers. The waiter glanced at us and said, "We have a special promotion right now. If a couple takes a selfie while holding hands or kissing, you get a free drink." Elise looked up at me, gauging my expression, and waved her hand dismissively, mumbling, "We're not a couple." The waiter looked at me, then winked and said, "Holding hands will get you the drink too." Elise was about to explain again, but I took her hand in mine. The waiter snapped a quick photo and handed me the instant film picture with a smile, calling out, "Couple at table 9. Here are your 2 free beers." Elise's ears turned red, and she quickly withdrew her hand, her gaze flickering with a hint of something as she avoided eye contact with me. I lowered my head, and she placed a piece of meat on my plate. I raised my head, and she poured me more beer. Throughout the meal, neither of us spoke. Yet, the silence wasn't awkward. Instead, it felt like the comfortable ease of 2 friends who had known each other for a long time. By the time I was on my 4th beer, she snatched my cup away, shaking her head vigorously like a rattling drum. I arranged for my driver to take her home, and she quietly agreed with a soft mm. Before getting in the car, she looked back at me several times, her eyes filled with emotions, happiness, reluctance, something deeper hidden within her gaze. When I returned home, Monica was already asleep on the couch. The sound of the door closing stirred her, and she slowly opened her eyes. "Where have you been?" I shrugged off my coat and went straight to the bathroom to wash up. Moments later, she followed me in, grabbing my collar. "Marco, are you serious about that woman?" Chapter 12. Her voice was cold, urgent. As she threw a photo harshly at my face, it fluttered to the ground. It was the Polaroid of Elise and me. She had clearly gone through my clothes. I had loved Monica for 10 years. Thousands of days and nights. For her. Even glancing at another woman felt like a betrayal, let alone holding hands, hugging, or even kissing. I didn't even know how to interact with women anymore. But she moved effortlessly among all kinds of men, relishing their attention. Just holding hands with Elise made my heart race, my mind go blank. But Monica, simple thrills didn't even register with her anymore. I shook her hand off and bent down to pick up the photo. I like her. I wasn't just explaining it to her, I was saying it to myself. Monica froze. Her hands flustered as she hurried to hug my waist from behind. I could feel the warmth of her fingers sneaking under my shirt, and I impatiently pried her hands off. It's over, Monica. She stared at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. After a long silence, she walked barefoot towards the bedroom, softly muttering a single word, stay. I ignored her and grabbed my coat, slipping on my shoes. She leaned against the bedroom door, arms crossed over her chest, as if making a difficult decision. Marco, I'll delete everything you want me to. I'll even get rid of Mario if that's what you hate. Just cut that girl out too. Fire her, and we can keep the wedding as planned. Okay, marriage, what comes after that? I used to daydream about our life after the wedding, even coming up with several names for our future children. But now, when I think about it, it feels pointless. Seeing me lost in thought, she walked over and wrapped her arms around my neck, her hot body pressing against mine, her eyes filled with desire. Her lips moved closer to mine. I turned my head away. She froze awkwardly, refusing to give up as she forcefully turned my face toward her. Marco, you want me, don't you? Chapter 13. I couldn't stand it any longer and pushed her away. What do you mean by that? She slammed into the wall, biting her lip, her face flushed with anger. I pulled out my phone, opened the gallery, and played a video. The day I saw her and Mario entangled in the car wasn't just a coincidence. Before that, my people had already captured them together on video. I had watched this video countless times. Each time, it filled me with unbearable pain. Eventually, though, I became numb to it, maybe even at peace with it. Monica took the phone from me and, after just a glance, trembled as she deleted the video. It's not what you think. That day, he was crying because of how cold you were to him, and I just wanted to comfort him. Did comforting him require you to cling so tightly? I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Did it require you to lower your voice to suppress both pain and pleasure? Her gaze dropped, her voice hoarse. I don't even know how things ended up this way. I didn't mean for it to happen. She grabbed my wrist, her face pale. She was scared I'd leave, and she started to kiss me frantically, anywhere she could reach. I raised my arm, lifting my hand, ready to slap her, and she closed her eyes, waiting for the blow. Monica lifted her face gently, waiting for my hand to strike, her tears slipping silently down her cheeks, but instead, I gripped her arm tightly, angrily dragging her out of the house. Get out. I never want to see you again. She cried for a long time behind the door. Or maybe she was knocking. I couldn't tell. I finished showering, went to bed, put on my headphones, and quickly fell asleep. The next morning, when I opened the door, Monica was still crouched there. Chapter 14. I walked out without even acknowledging her presence. When I arrived at the office, Elise was sitting at her desk, resting her chin on her hand, lost in thought. When she saw me, she clumsily stood up and fumbled through a report, handing it to me. Mr. Song. I took the report and gestured for her to follow me into the office. She obediently trailed behind. Your report, aside from the beginning, the middle, and the end not being great, the overall structure is decent. Her cheeks puffed up slightly, and her tone dropped. I'll revise it. No need to revise it. You're not suited for this job, I said seriously. She turned her head slightly, visibly upset. Got it. I'll go write my resignation letter now. I've got a different job that suits you better. I suddenly reached out and pinched her cheek. Be my girlfriend. She grabbed my hand, our eyes meeting. She seemed to be questioning whether she had heard me correctly. I gently pulled her into my arms. Her body trembled, but she leaned her head on my shoulder. I said, be my girlfriend. Just as the words left my mouth, the office door was kicked open. My father barged in, holding Mario's hand. You ungrateful brat. You want to ship me off to a foreign retirement home? I'd rather die. Several security guards followed closely behind, apologizing profusely. I rubbed my temples, frustrated. What's the point of this? The company belonged to my grandfather. Mom divorced you before she died. I glanced at Mario. You cheated, and left with nothing. Don't you remember? My father straightened up. So what? I'll give Mario 25% of the shares, and then I'll leave. I smiled coldly. Billions of dollars, he thought he could just ask for it and I'd give it. On what grounds? Mario suddenly dropped to his knees. Brother, I apologize. I know my presence has caused you a lot of distress. Please forgive me. Father quickly pulled him up. Don't apologize. You owe him nothing. He's the one who's wronged you as your brother. Mario's face turned pale. His eyes filled with desperation. Refusing to stand, he turned to Elise instead. I know you're his new lover. Right. Please, help me. I don't want to be the reason they're fighting like this. Elise stepped back a few paces, muttering quietly. Stop playing the victim. Aren't you tired of this? I've heard these lines so many times they're wearing out my ears. If you really want to apologize, disappearing would be more sincere, don't you think? Mario froze, his tears flowing, looking even more wounded, but Elise just rolled her eyes and hid behind me. Enough. Security. Escort them out. Mario stood up and approached me, lowering his voice. How does it feel to wear the horns of a cheating husband? Do you believe me when I say I could make Elise crawl into my bed just like Monica? Chapter 15. I kicked him hard in the stomach, sending him to the ground, clutching his belly in agony. Since you keep talking about apologies, then kneel properly. Stop blabbering like a fool. I followed with another punch to his face. His thick skin was so tough that it numbed my hand. Elise gently took my hand and blew on it. My father was fuming on the side, stomping and shouting. I tossed him a card, chuckling. Take the money and go abroad. Don't ever come back, or stay here. Protect your son until you die, and I'll drag this out as long as you want. As I started counting down from 3, my father's face turned from pale to livid. Fine, you win, he finally said through gritted teeth, snatching the card and walking away. I wasn't surprised at all. The person my father loved most had always been himself. Mario, still writhing on the ground, couldn't believe his father's choice. He crawled a few steps, shouting, Dad, you can't do this. How could you abandon me again? You promised you wouldn't. I waved my hand, and security lifted him up and carried him away. The office was finally quiet again, with just me and Elise. I felt a bit of sadness. This man, who had been a part of my life for so long, though selfish, I had never treated him like this before. Before my mother passed, she held my hand, crying, and said her biggest regret in life was choosing my father. He didn't attend her funeral, didn't shed a single tear. He once said that love had turned him into a slave, driven by others, unable to escape. In reality, he had been lost in his indulgences, and his rationality had long been consumed by his endless desires. He wasn't even worthy of uttering the word love. You want barbecue? I'll let you drink an extra bottle tonight. Elisa's soft, white fingers tugged at my sleeve, her eyes gentle. I nodded. Sure. I was really tired. Ever since Mario appeared, I'd been setting this up. His every move had been under my control. Clearly, I had overestimated his capabilities. Other than stirring up some media sympathy and fighting a few battles in the court of public opinion, everything else had been pathetic. The only thing that nearly made me lose control was Monica. Chapter 16. Unlike how I felt with Monica, being with Elise gave me a sense of peace. In the time we had been together, I found myself drawn to her strange yet endearing quirks, things I couldn't understand before. When it rained, even though we had 2 umbrellas, she would secretly hide one just so I'd have to shield her from the rain. When she wanted to hold hands while shopping, she'd pretend something got into her eye and say she couldn't see clearly. She didn't even have a real job, but she found all kinds of excuses to stay and work late with me. I was captivated by her. Perhaps loving someone is just an uncontrollable desire to be close to them. Every time I touched her, my heartbeat became impossible to control. I loved the way she made me feel, the sweetness of her lips, the way they always left me blushing, on the verge of losing control. I didn't want anyone to interrupt us, yet there were always people who couldn't help but be a nuisance. After finishing dinner with some foreign clients, I was ambushed by reporters at the door. I patiently answered a barrage of nonsensical questions, and finally, a reporter at the back waved their hand. Mr. Song, we've seen several intimate photos of you with your new girlfriend recently. Is it true, as rumors say, that wedding bells might be ringing soon? I thought for a moment, about to respond. Then Monica's bodyguards appeared, scattering the reporters. She stood there in dark sunglasses, her face expressionless. Can we talk? The atmosphere in the backseat of the car was stifling. Are you done playing? Let's call it even. I don't want to wait much longer. I glanced at her and shook my head. We're not the same. I couldn't read her expression behind the sunglasses, but her voice trembled slightly. Marco, it's been 10 years. Are you really going to break the promises you made? You can play around. I won't stop you, even after marriage. I won't stop you, no matter if you find 10 other women. Stop. I interrupted her, exhaling a long breath. You know me. I never play around with feelings. Maybe we're just born different. My heart can only hold one person. With that, I opened the car door. She turned her head away but lightly grabbed my hand. A single tear slid down her cheek. Can you please stop putting pressure on my father's company? Both of us knew that without my favoritism, her father's company would have collapsed long ago. But even a dying camel is bigger than a horse. Even without my unlimited credit cards, Monica's family still had enough money for her to live comfortably for a lifetime. It wouldn't be as good as before, but it wouldn't be terrible either. I calmly replied, I'm not making things difficult. If they want to collaborate, they just need to compete fairly. She let go of my hand, defeated. That evening, I stared at my phone countless times. Elise still hadn't replied to my messages. Worried, I put on my coat, ready to go find her. But when I opened the door, a drunken Monica stumbled in, her voice sultry. Honey, are you still mad? Come back to me. I'll change everything you don't like. I impatiently pushed her away. Get lost. She clung to my waist from behind. Don't leave just yet. Maybe Elise is already in Mario's bed by now. He's great at seducing women. I couldn't take it anymore. I slapped her and coldly asked, where is she? She held her face, laughing and crying at the same time. If she's just like me, who would you choose? Her or me? Chapter 17. Panic gripped me completely. I floored the gas pedal, my anger boiling over. When I arrived at Mario's rented place, a bunch of thugs were gathered outside, big, intimidating guys, covered in tattoos. They looked like they were up to no good. I didn't need to guess. They were obviously hired by Mario. I got out of the car and, without a word, pulled out my checkbook. How much do you want? I'll give you 10 times the amount. Now get out of here. The thugs hesitated, and their blonde-haired leader swaggered forward. Who the hell are you? I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. I lunged at them, fists flying. After spending so much money on professional combat training, it wasn't hard to handle these goons. But they fought dirty. Their hits were harsh and precise. I could taste blood in my mouth, and I thought I heard Elisa's voice calling out to me. Before I blacked out, I saw police cars arriving, and the thugs scattering in all directions. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. Elise was sitting by my side, her eyes never leaving me. Are you okay? I sat up, leaning against the bed rail. She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm sorry, my brother's men might have broken Mario's leg. Her brother's men. She hurried to explain, my brother isn't a bad person. He runs legitimate businesses, he owns several bars. I remained silent, thinking about the notorious underground king, Tigre. He didn't know you were my boyfriend. She mumbled as she handed me a business card. He says he owes you an apology. If you need anything, just call him. I ruffled her hair gently. As long as you're okay. Monica stood at the door, not bothering to knock. She just watched me from a distance for a long time. Finally, she walked over and spoke softly. Marco, you waited for me for 10 years. I can wait for you too. When you get tired, just come back. Elise tightened her grip on my hand, pouting in discontent. In your dreams. I squeezed Elisa's hand in return, meeting Monica's gaze. I won't get tired. I'll avoid all the temptations and love her endlessly, over and over again. Monica smiled, a touch of self-deprecation in her expression, but that didn't matter. Time would prove everything. Chapter 18. Mario was sent to prison in a wheelchair. I went to visit him once. His face was twisted with hatred, his mouth spewing venomous words. Marco, your father never loved you. The woman you loved never loved you either. You're just an unloved piece of trash. When I get out, I'll show you that the life you stole from me is rightfully mine. I smiled faintly. You should work on building some muscle in there. Acting so fragile won't help you. He broke down completely, hurling curses at me. It didn't matter. Whatever hardships awaited him, they wouldn't be few. As I walked out into the clear, sunny day, Elise was standing by the car, waving at me, bouncing around like an excited little rabbit. I walked towards her, faster and faster, until I was running, wanting to be close to her, to hold her. In this complicated world, loving and being loved are both important, but mutual love is everything. Finding someone you both love and share the same values with is rare. It's like a redemption in life.